Hola, you are listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna, aka your intuitive prima, aka the host of this podcast. And I'm so happy because I'm finally starting to record again with guests, and I'm so excited to share with you Denise. Hola Denise, ¿cómo
Hola,
estás?
muy bien.
So Denise is someone that she came across me, I think, on TikTok, and then we started to become mutuals. And so she would go on my lives. And then eventually she was like, hey, I'm doing healings.
Yeah, it was in the very beginning of me discovering that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to share this. Like, can I try this on you?
Yeah. And so, you guys, something that's been really interesting on this path is that the more that I lean into, like, for example, oh, I'm an intuitive and like I can feel energy, I think the more I'm starting to call in people into my network that are similar, that are
Mm-hmm.
open to this stuff. And it's so interesting because I think knowing that I'm a Latina, I always think like, yeah, maybe there's Latinos that do meditation and affirmations, but probably not that feel energy. No sé por qué. For me, como que todavía, I think I'm still the only one, but thankfully, like the universe is showing me like, no, girl, like there's so many other people. Do you feel like you feel that being a first gen or a Latina?
Not really. I feel like in my community, there's so many Latinos that like I'm pretty open to that. Like, I'm like, okay, I do resonate with a lot of them and a lot of their stories as I'm kind of coming out and sharing more. So I don't really feel alone, but I know that most of your work is online. And in the very, very beginning, I did feel alone, but not just as a Latina, just in general, I felt alone until I started
Mm.
finding community.
One thing that I think the podcast has shown us is that everyone's upbringing is a little bit different, and the word first gen looks different in each household, and it means something different.
hmm
So can you share with us a little bit about you and your upbringing?
So I was born in Texas. I'm actually the middle child. But my oldest sister was born in Mexico, and she was brought up
Mm.
by my grandparents in Mexico. So
Um,
I was born here in Texas. Well, I'm in Arizona now, but I was born in Texas, and then from there, I had my little sister, and we grew up with our mom, who is super Catholic. So we were at church every Sunday, and as the years went by, it kind of um, we got more involved with the church, as like altar servers, being in the choir, teaching catechism, and like just doing all the things within the Catholic Church.
so in Texas is where you grew up.
I was actually in Texas only until I was like maybe like 5 years old, 5, 6. And then from there, I
Okay.
moved to California. I was only there for like about a year, and I've been in Arizona since I was 7.
And did your eldest sibling come here eventually? I don't know if I
She
missed that.
did. So she did end up
Okay.
coming here eventually, but it wasn't until she graduated from high school and, just to go to college. And so
Oh.
she moved out here. I think she was 18 years old, started going to college and learning English because she did not know English at all.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So then in a sense you were kind of the eldest here, let's
Yeah.
say. And growing up, did you have Latinos around you? Like did you feel at home in your hometown, let's say?
We did have Latinos around my surroundings and my upbringing, mainly because, my mom didn't speak very well. Her English was kind of broken, and I feel like she just never really dived into it very much. So we were always surrounded by Latinos.
Hmm. And then you mentioned growing up Catholic.
Yes.
Ooh, I think that's so interesting. If you guys aren't watching the podcast, she has crystals behind her and a setup that I feel like una mamá católica might have a mini heart attack about.
Yes, I was I was actually so scared the first time she came into my home and everything had changed within my space.
Mm,
I was like, "Oh my God,
yeah.
my mom's coming over. What is she gonna think? What is she gonna say?" Because everything had started changing for me and I had not shared that part of me.
Yeah. we'll get into a little bit about like that transition in a second. I do want to ask you, as you know, that the podcast is on healing and awakening journeys. So, which one do you resonate with most or both? When do you feel like there was a beginning to that for you?
Okay, I feel like I resonate with both. Um, so I was in a really toxic relationship for 16 years. And within that relationship, I feel like I completely lost myself. I lost who I was, because everything I did was, like me walking on eggshells trying to please this other person. So it was a very
Mm,
healing journey for me, but also an awakening because I started discovering so many things about myself within that healing journey. Um, Things that I didn't even know. I didn't even know that there was family members, ancestors who did anything in the spiritual world. So it was
yeah.
something that I started kind of learning through that self discovery of who I was.
Mm. Okay, so you were in a long-term relationship. I'm assuming you got with this person at a young age.
We were, I think I was like 16 or 17 when I started dating my ex husband.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the time I was 20, I had my first child.
When you were kind of taking these steps, like getting with someone, having a child, was it like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing? Did you feel like you were pushed into it? What was that experience like for you?
For me, it was something that I've always wanted. So, one of the things that I didn't say in the beginning is so I have a stepfather. And so I
Okay.
grew up, with my stepdad, my mom, and I didn't get to know my dad. So when I
Mm,
got into this relationship, I had um, that mindset of like, I'm gonna find the one, and it's gonna be my first and my only, and we're gonna have a family.
mm,
I'm gonna have that family that I thought I didn't have.
mm,
So that was kind of my mindset with that. So when I got with him, I kind of like looking back, I know that there was a lot of red flags, and I was kind of like blinded. I was just like, I don't even want to look at them, even though
mm.
they were all there. Um,
Okay.
and I wanted to build a family. I wanted to have children, and divorce was just not a thing that I ever thought I would ever go through or wanted to. I wanted to have the family that I didn't have, but now I realize that I have always had, if that makes sense.
Oh. Yeah, I find it fascinating how sometimes like your identity is so intertwined with the decisions that you make.
Hmm.
So, thank you for tying it all together. It sounds like you were projecting out your dream and kind of making him fit in the boxes that maybe he didn't fit
Hmm.
in.
Yes.
The toxicity, for example, I don't want to skip over that. Do you feel like those around you identified that too, or was it something that you hid from them, wanting to continue this kind of vision that you had for your life?
My family definitely saw it. They could see
Okay.
all that toxicity, and I was just in denial, and I would always just kind
Mm,
of be super defensive about it because I would be like, no, 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 you don't know him. I always made
mm,
up excuses basically to continue on this little life that I wanted to create. You know,
I see.
I grew up feeling hurt because I didn't have my father, and I always wondered, okay, so was I just not enough? Like, am I
Mm,
lovable? Am I this? Am I that? And so I didn't want my children to experience that. My stepdad was great, he really was. And I didn't really perceive him as a father until I became a mother and I then saw a different side of him. But
mm,
within my relationship, I was just like, no, these people don't know what I'm going through. And I just want my children to have everything that I didn't have. So that was my
mm.
mindset.
Did the toxicity start before kids or it already existed?
Yeah, it was
Say.
definitely there before the kids. Before the
Okay, I
kids.
see.
But again, I had that mentality of I'm gonna be with one person This can be my one
Mm,
and only. And so with that mindset, I stuck with him. I was like, no,
mm,
this was my first, my everything, and everything is going to be okay. And I thought, like, oh, it's just because we're young, we're going to grow up and he's going to mature and things are going to be fine.
mm,
And so, yes, we have our first child and things did not get better. If anything, they just, with time, things got worse.
mm. Yeah, I think I asked that because like sometimes it's so hard to let go of the vision that we have for ourselves, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so that's what I'm sensing. It's like you had a really strong vision for not only like the type of life you wanted, but then add your kids and maybe they weren't even
Mm-hmm.
there yet, but you were already creating this vision for them and moving
Yes.
forward accordingly. And then do you feel like your healing and awakening started as you were experiencing this relationship, or did it happen once you left? Like what would be the
I
trigger, I guess, for that?
My healing journey actually started when I was still within the relationship as my children were getting
Okay.
older. My children,
Mm.
I think that by the time my daughter was like 9, 10, um, well, maybe 8, 9, she started asking me, and even my son would be like, why'd you marry him? So they would ask
Oh,
me, why would you
wow.
marry him? My daughter would
Mm.
tell me, I never want to have a boyfriend or a husband like him ever. And so I
Wow.
found myself starting to kind of guide my children and tell my children, okay, this is not how you treat women. This is not how you allow anyone to treat you. And so as I started doing that, it started triggering something within me like, okay, what am I doing? Me having to
Mm.
tell my children all of this, yet I'm not leading by example. Like, what am I teaching them? Like,
Wow.
and through all that, and after my divorce, I realized that I was actually creating more hurt than anything. I thought I was saving them from the hurt that I had felt as a child, but
Yeah.
I wasn't saving them from anything. If anything, I was just, creating a different wound for them.
Wow. I just think like so many women experience that, like facing facing a relationship that maybe they never thought they'd find themselves in, and then also
Hmm.
debating like what's best for my kids, right? Like what would be
Hmm.
um yeah, what's best, leaving, staying, because you carried such a deep wound of your dad wasn't there. So I imagine it like only, felt even deeper to then be the person. Like I think it's a little bit different when you're the person that chooses to leave the relationship, because
Hmm.
then your kids could blame you for
I
leaving.
didn't want to break that family apart. I wanted to keep my family together. I wanted my children to have their mom and dad together. But it was causing so much more pain. And once I started seeing that my own kids were questioning, why did you marry him? Why are you with him? That made me really sit and like really think deeply about my actions. Like, okay, so I'm here for them, but they're not happy. I'm not happy. Like, none of us are happy. And so then I had to,
Hmm.
make that tough decision of like, okay, how do I leave this relationship? It's so toxic. And, there's threats of like, well, if you leave, I'm keeping the kids, I'm going to take them away from you.
Mm,
Like, even deeper threats that were made that I'm like, okay, can I leave this relationship? Am I capable of doing it? Do I have the strength to do it? What's going to happen to
yeah.
me? What's going to happen to my kids? Um, but one day I woke up and I was at work, and for some reason I'm like, today's the day. And I just left work.
Mm,
I came home, packed up a few things for myself and my children, and I just went down to the court and filed for divorce.
wow. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
At that time, were you like, let's say, católica? Were you praying? Did you have a community, resources? Kind of like what was helping you move forward in that way?
It's funny that you asked that because I ended up having a wound with the Catholic Church. and that community because of this
Mm,
relationship as well. I only had my son at this time. And so he was about 1, 2 years old. And we had our first major fight where it became physical. So in that
mm,
moment, well, the next day, my first thing was, you know what? I'm going to call my priest. I'm going to call the church. I'm going to call the
wow.
office and I'm going to talk to him because I didn't know who else I could speak to that could talk to me without, being too close. I didn't want to talk
Okay.
to my mom about it, even though she knew of what had happened. I just wanted someone who was more neutral. And when I did that,
Mm-hmm.
the lady at the office was like, nope, he's busy. He cannot speak with you. They wouldn't even take a message,
Oh,
nothing. And so that right there kind of made me kind of step back because I was so hurt by the church.
mm,
And for a while there, I was upset with God too. But, through time, I realized, okay, no, this has nothing to do, not with the priest and not with God. This is all, it's the community, it's the people there. But that was really tough. So
wow.
as I was going through the divorce, that was something that I felt like I was kind of doing on my own.
I know you mentioned you also resonate with awakening. It's kind of really cutting off ties in certain aspects that could uplift you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making you face yourself because you feel like you've lost that backup, let's say. And I think that once when you're going through the awakening piece, it feels really harsh because you feel
Mm-hmm.
let down, you feel alone, you feel isolated.
Yes.
Um However, wouldn't you say like now looking back, it's also kind of like making you become who you're meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
forcing you into this path, right?
Yes.
That you're where
It
you're
def-
supposed to get yourself out.
yeah, it definitely made me dive deeper within myself and see something bigger.
In those moments, did you feel the uplifting moments of like, oh, I'm healing, this is for my own good? Or not necessarily, that wasn't kind of like the time for that?
No, I feel like in the beginning of that, it was just so well, first, my children were like super happy that this was happening.
Mm,
I remember my son saying like, "Oh, good. I don't have to ever speak to him again." Like my kids wanted nothing to do with him.
wow.
It was just a major realization for me of like, oh, okay, like it's better for me to do what's best for me because at the end of the day, if I'm happy, if I'm safe, if I'm good, my children will be too, you know?
Mm,
So the beginning of my divorce, I don't think was very like, oh, okay, I'm having an awakening and I'm starting this journey. No, it was more of like, okay, now it's just me and my children. And I started to try to figure out who I was because everything I did before was like, very within that marriage.
mm-hmm.
And now it was like, okay, who am I? Who am I truly?
Wow.
I started hanging out with friends and I really didn't hang out with my friends very much, not on my own anyway. I started going out and I started seeing that I was a whole different person. I was like, oh, wow, I do like to have fun. I
Mm,
do like to go out. I do like to dance. I like all these things. So it started kind of like that journey of like seeking within myself of like, who am I as a person? Not as a wife,
yeah.
not as a girlfriend, not as, like that that little box of like, okay, I'm a mom, I'm a wife and all of that. It's like, okay, who am I? What do I like? So I kind of started within that. So then I feel like that's why I was like, yes, it was a healing journey for me.
Yeah, rewriting the story of who you are outside of this dynamic, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Woo. Did
Yeah.
that feel exciting to you or was it daunting? What were kind of like whatever you do remember, I guess, what were you experiencing?
I was experiencing a mixture of a lot of things. Like I would go out and I would have so much fun, but I was doing all of these other things, like, oh, yes, the dancing, the drinking, coming home late, without somebody
Okay.
having to tell me, oh, what are you doing? Or, don't be doing that. Like, that's not okay. You know what I mean? Like, I could go out and I could
Yeah.
mingle with people, women, men, it didn't matter. And it was all just in fun, and I could just be a social butterfly. So that was very refreshing to me. But at the same time, I would find myself coming back home and sitting in darkness because, okay, now all my friends are
Mm,
gone, they're at home, and now it's just me. And,
yeah.
so that was another part of me that I had to like realize, like, okay, is this who I am? Like, I came to a point because I was drinking so much and going out like every weekend that I was like, you know what? This is not who I am either. This is not me. This is not who I want to be. Like, I don't want to be drinking all the time. And I don't need to drink to have fun, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that it was, it's kind of like a trial and error, I guess. I was like doing all the things and I was like, okay, no, wait, this resonates with me. This doesn't resonate with me. That was fun, but no, and that's not who I
Yeah. Ooh. This reminds me of like a point in my journey too where I literally had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, this is not who you are, you know? Like,
am.
and it's so strange because I don't know if in that moment you knew who you were, you know? It's just like you knew this wasn't it.
I just didn't know what to do with so much freedom, you know? It's like, okay, I'm free. I could
Mm,
do anything. I could go out. I could do this. I could do that. So it was like,
yeah.
okay, wait, let's, back up a little bit. Like, no, that's not who you are. Like you went from being like in a cage to being completely free and kind of overdoing yourself, you know?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you though, were you getting, since you were a mom, do you feel like going out and stuff like te criticaban for doing that?
I want to say that in the beginning of the whole divorce, it wasn't just me trying to find who I was, because it was also
Okay.
my children finding that freedom within themselves that now we got to enjoy our home. Now they got to, invite friends over and be outside of their room and not just stuck in that, in the four walls within that bedroom, because they would always avoid being out with their dad as well, so
Mm,
it was like the three of us were trying to figure out who we were. Okay, now we're free. We can do this. We can do that. As I was initially going out, I didn't feel like they had any resentment or, any negative thoughts towards that. And the reason I don't feel that way is because I would wait, and go out late and I'd come back and whether I was tired, if I, if it just didn't matter how I felt the next day, like I'd be up and I'm like, okay, now I'm back
mm,
into my mom role. Um,
okay.
so it was like, okay, now it's time for you guys to go to bed, and then I'd go out, and then I'd come back,
Mm.
and everything was still normal per se.
Did you find yourself having to find your voice? Like I wonder if your ex was the voice of like a authority in your home, let's say, and so once you
Mhm.
left, did you find yourself like rewriting who you are as a mom también because now you have more authority and say and all of that?
Mhm. So even as a mom, yes, everything changed. I was able to be what I wanted to have as a child. Like I wanted to
Mm,
have, being, um, growing up with a mom who is super Catholic and, just with the olden days kind of mentality, like it's hard to come up and be expressive. And her just being, like very loving with however you come and present yourself, it's more of that tough love. And so
yeah.
I didn't want that because I saw that when she would be that way, I would just kind of close off. And same thing
Mm-hmm.
even with my ex-husband. Like I would close off and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't need to express anything. I'll just keep that within myself. And so I didn't want my
Mm,
children to be that way. So, once my ex was out of the picture, I was very open with them about everything, things that we would go through. And so they were able to also, in return, be as open with me.
oh, how beautiful. And around this time, how was like let's just bring the Catholic family, how was that? Were you like did they have opinions about you leaving? Were they supportive? How did you feel in terms of that type of community or support that could have or maybe was there for you?
I know that my mom wasn't very happy about me not going to church anymore. She always
Mm.
bring that up, like, oh, ya no vas a la iglesia, like, and I just didn't feel it within myself. Like, I would go to church and do all the things because that's what I grew up with. That's what I was told,
Mhm.
this is what you do, and not so much because that's what I felt within myself, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. But she was still there for you, let's say, post divorce?
Yeah, she was still there, but
Okay.
whenever church would come up, she would always ask, "Oh, are you guys coming to church?" No, like, and if we do, okay, we'll maybe see you there. But yeah, like she wasn't very supportive, and even up until now, like she's kind of like, "Oh my gosh, like you guys don't go to church," because my sisters have kind of dwindled off from the church.
Hmm. I see. Definitely religion and awakening and all of this stuff. Like, I think it's something that so many first gens navigate, and maybe
Mhm.
it's not spoken about so openly. Like, even I don't think within us, right? Because since we are detaching from these systems, we're not looking to enter new ones, right? So it's not like we're
Mhm.
in these new spaces where we're talking about that, but we're going to be doing a part two. And I think that in that, I do want to talk about some of those experiences, some of the comments that people make, because I have had requests of like, can you do an episode about religion and awakening
Mhm.
and kind of like how they start to clash? Going back to your story, what do you feel like would be a next kind of moment that stands out for you as you're rediscovering who you are, stepping more into like maybe a more authentic version of you? What do
Mhm.
you feel like popped up next for you in your healing slash awakening?
Well, definitely with my awakening, I had so many things happen that were just out of the norm, I would have prophetic dreams happen, and some of the dreams I would
Mm.
be like, okay, well, how how did that happen? Like, or why am I experiencing that? Like, I started asking questions like, hey, is there anyone in the family who is like that, who has dreams, and then a couple of days later it comes true, or in the moment,
Oh,
so I started having dreams like that. I started having experiences where all my lights would turn on and off, like my TV would turn on and off. I would go to work, come home to having everything on in my home and not understanding, okay, like what happened, why is everything on? So I would turn everything off, and sometimes things would come
wow.
right back on as I would turn it off, and I would be like, oh, okay. And I started seeing orbs. It was like all these little things that finally I was like, okay, you have my attention. Like, what is it that I need to seek within? Like, where is this coming from? And I wasn't getting any answers from my family, especially because they're so Catholic, that I was like, okay, this is something that I'm gonna have to discover on my own.
Mm.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. So it was very like physical. Like it's kind of like stuff was happening around you.
Hmm.
Did it ever make you feel like, oh, it's because I've strayed away from church?
No, I never even had that thought at all. If anything, it made me kind of go into meditations. So I started
Mm.
doing meditations. I did start asking questions, like in regards to like going to like psychics and things like that. Just because I was seeking so many answers, and like there was nowhere for me to turn to get them. My grandparents have already passed. And that's another one. Another big one is my grandfather. He would constantly come into my dreams, and
Oh.
and he played a major role, um, because even before my divorce, um, I experienced my grandfather. I could hear him walking down the hallway, and I could smell the cigarettes
Mm.
because he was a chain smoker. And I could smell the cigarettes. I
Mm.
could hear him coughing. I could hear, his specific way of stepping. Um, and that did scare me. Um, I just thought, oh, okay, I'm in his home. And so maybe he's just here, like his spirit is here within the home. But as time started going by and he started coming more into my dreams and I started getting messages from him, I was like, okay, this is something
Mm.
else. This was not the house. This is me. Yeah.
Did it scare you at all, or did you feel like peace with what was happening?
The first time it did scare me. And because that was still, when my children were little, and I didn't really think
Mm,
anything much bigger of other than like, oh, okay, like the ghost stories or this and that. Like I didn't really know much about the spiritual community or spirituality or anything like that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like why is he here? So I was afraid. But then fast forward to like after my divorce and me trying to seek answers within myself, I remember I would sit there and I'd be like, okay, grandpa, I'm not scared anymore. Like, what is it that I need to know? Like, why are you coming around?
mhm. And around this time, I'm trying to see like your grandpa. Do you feel like you started to already do some meditations and all of that stuff that was kind of like building this energy around you?
Hmm.
Like, do you feel like you were in some way also spearheading this, or did that start and then you started to lean into the spiritual realm?
So all of those things happened, and so I started leaning into spirituality, trying to seek answers of like, okay, why am I having these dreams? Why can I hear my grandfather? Like, what is happening? And it's been a while since all of this. I mean, my divorce took place about 7 to 8 years ago. And so now it's like, now I
Mm,
know that my grandpa is one of my guides. I know that he was trying to awaken me. And I didn't know that then.
yeah. Did this happen in 2016? Your divorce?
My divorce was
Or
2018.
2018? Oh, okay,
So,
okay. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I
Yeah,
think seven years.
okay. Just because they say awakening happens in waves,
Hmm.
waves of people, and it's so interesting to me because those that I in some way like us, right? Like we kind of met online and then we started talking. It's been waves of like 2016, 2018. Como que everyone, it's taken us also this long to get here, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
process. Because at first it's like these small things that seem so unrelated. You're not looking at your experience as like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
awakening, I'm healing. It's like these things that are hard, also some are new. It's like all coming up. And I like to mention that too, porque I think some people can listen to stories and feel like, oh, but they knew that that's what was going on. And it's like, no, you put the pieces together in the
Hmm.
future, like when you
Yeah.
start to look back.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because for me now it's like, oh, okay, the puzzle pieces are all coming together. Like it's all making sense. I had no clue.
Yeah. So after that, what stands out next for you? You know, these things physically are happening. You start to meditate and try to communicate with your grandpa. What comes next in your story?
So after kind of doing all of that, I did start doing a lot of healing work, a lot of shadow work. So I wanted to heal all those wounds within me. And as I started working on that, I just felt like there was something else missing, because I was learning and just having interaction with people online. And I was like, no, I feel like everything that I'm receiving is something bigger. Like, I need someone here in the physical, someone here within my
Mm,
community. So, one day things ended up aligning, and I did end up meeting someone who then referred me to someone who that person then referred me to someone who's here. Um,
mm,
and she's a shaman. And so I started kind of working with her. I started experiencing different things with her, like plant medicine, just
mm,
different things that kind of opened me up even further. But even then, I still felt like there was something missing. I'm like, okay, I'm receiving all these messages, but I still can't pinpoint what all this means. I feel like I'm
mhm,
here for something bigger, but I can't pinpoint what that is, and I don't know why I'm unable to receive this. Um,
mhm.
and within time, plant medicine to a different level started calling me. And I feel that that's what really has changed everything for me.
Yeah, it's that seeking. It's kind of like a little hunger within, right? Where it's kind of like
Hmm.
yes, but there's more. Yes, but no. Like it's a
Hmm.
guiding something. Do you see that as like your intuition, as your guides? Like what do you think gave you that like knowing of like sí, pero síguele, you know?
I want to say it was a lot of intuition and, without realizing my guides kind of pushing that, like, no, there is more. So
Mm,
as I kind of dived deeper into all those things, I was like, okay. So I got to a place where I'm like, okay, why can't I expand myself more? I even had dreams where I was doing healings and I didn't really realize exactly that I was being shown something that I was capable of doing. But I was just like, okay, how do I tap into all these things more? Like, what is keeping me from receiving all of that? So I ended up doing Bufo, and
mm,
Bufo really
beautiful.
like it basically shattered all the walls that were within my heart space, allowing me to
Mm,
really see that I was worthy of receiving everything. Because even though I was wanting to receive and seeking that,
mm-hmm,
there was still something within me that was like, no, like we're not enough or we're not worthy of that. So those
mm.
things were keeping me from receiving things to a bigger extent, I guess you could say.
Wow. I love that you bring this up because I think like it can apply in so many ways.
Hmm.
The knowing there's more, feeling it and wanting it, and yet kind of getting stuck in the searching phase, not recognizing that sometimes we can be the block to the
Hmm.
answers, to the receiving.
Yeah.
And so interesting that for you, it's kind of like you kind of intuitively knew something stopping me from getting to the next thing, but it wasn't easy for you to identify it.
Hmm.
Bufo, I think is it the toad
Hmm.
poison?
Yes.
Okay. And that journey, I think are those the ones that are a little bit shorter and you have multiple or no?
So Bufo is it's just one journey. It's about
One.
20 to 30 minutes long. But it's
Wow, super
yeah,
short.
it's short,
Okay.
but it's very intense, and for me
Mhm.
it was life-changing.
20 to 30 minutes. Does it feel like that in the experience?
Not at all.
Okay.
I don't
It feels
feel like
longer or
I feel like it
or
fell
more?
shorter. Like it
Oh,
felt shorter.
wow. Okay.
Hmm.
Do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about what happened there? Like, what does it mean for your heart walls? Like, for anyone that's tuning in, it's like, okay, I'm following the religion and the divorce, but like, what
Hmm.
heart walls? ¿Qué es eso?
No, definitely. So after my divorce, I guess I could say that I love to give. I'm a giver. So I would give, 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 but it was really hard for me to receive. Even something as simple as, "Hey, you look beautiful today." Like when we kind of say,
Mm,
"Oh, but my outfit this," or "Oh, but my hair." Like we don't just openly say, "Okay, thank you, I received that." So
yeah.
things as minimal as that to even bigger to where, even when I started dating again, it was hard for me to receive
Mm,
love. It was hard for me to receive help. Like those things would like make me feel so anxious within myself, like, oh no, no, I got it. Like I wanted to
yeah.
do everything because I was so used to playing that role of, that masculine
Hmm.
energy. Um,
Yeah.
when you sit with Bufo, as soon as you smoke it, because it's something that you smoke, as soon as you smoke it, you basically count 10 to 10. Okay. So, and as you count to 10,
Okay.
as soon as you hit 10, you're gone. For me, it wasn't like
Mm,
that. For me, I count to 10 and I'm in my head. Like, Denise, why can't you
mm.
let go? Denise, why can't you receive? And it was just a battle within myself that I had to bring up to the facilitator, like, hey, this is happening, like I haven't left yet, I'm still here. I'm still here and I'm having this inner
Like,
battle with
where's the
myself.
bus?
Yes. So then having that conversation with her of like how I felt and her telling me, but you are worthy. You are worthy of receiving and you are enough. And, that kind of broke me down. And I was just like, okay, and I started praying and, speaking to my guides.
Mm.
And she was like, would you like another dose? And I said yes. And as she's preparing it, I continue speaking with my guides. I'm like, I'm ready. Like, please just allow me to receive. Like, I am ready. And so once I take the medicine again, this time I hit 10 and I'm gone. And I was
Mm.
like, I basically found myself in a black space where I could feel like I was receiving love. I was receiving love
Okay.
from the universe, from God,
Mm.
creator, whatever you guys believe in. So I felt like I was just receiving so much love. And at one point I was like, okay, thank you. Like I'm ready to go back. Like, thank you, I receive, and it was like, no, this is just the beginning. And it just kept
Wow.
coming. It just kept coming. And I really felt like in my heart space, it was like shattering was happening. Like they were breaking down the walls with so much love that they were giving me. Not only did I feel the love from the universe, but I felt it within myself. I thought that I had done all this healing work and that I knew what self love was. But in that moment, I was like, wow, that was just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's so much more. Like, and
Mm.
I felt it. I could feel it from them, from myself. And so that dark space that I was in turned into flashes of light. To all of a sudden, I was in
Mm.
a completely white space, like pure white
Wow.
space. And it was just so beautiful. And it was like a knowing of like, you're here for a reason. You do have a mission. There's a purpose. It's
Mm.
bigger. Like I knew in that moment, but still didn't have all the answers. But it was just that deep knowing of like, no, like I really am here for a reason. And I have a bigger purpose and I will get there in its divine time. And then just once I was able to open my eyes, I was just like, wow, like I'm back, I'm here, and it's so beautiful. But within that time, before I even opened my eyes, something even bigger happened. Um, I had always been told that I was a healer, but I didn't know to what capacity or how, what does that mean? But as
Yeah.
I was laying there on the ground outside, my hands literally felt like they became magnets to the earth
Mm.
and they were like
Mhm.
stuck. And I felt like I was receiving so much energy flow. It felt hot and my hands were like tingling, but I couldn't move them. I couldn't lift them. I couldn't do anything. But just like, oh my gosh, like, what is that? What's happening? What's happening within
Wow.
my hands? And to
Yeah.
then awaken and to see, the sky and to see birds fly by. And I was just like, wow. I was so emotional because I had received so much love that I never ever felt in my life, ever. And so much gratitude for the air that we breathe, for the trees, for just everything. And for the next week and a half or so, every day, I would wake up and I would be in tears, but in
Mm.
such a beautiful way of just being in that gratitude of like, wow. So just grateful for
Yeah.
everything. And even for every version of myself, when I would think of every version, every stage in my life, like just having so much grace for me and, just everything. I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but it was just very emotional.
That sounds beautiful. And I remember when we first met, I mentioned like, "Oh, I've tried mushrooms." And you're like, "You know, there's like the babies of the of the plant
Yeah,
medicine."
they're the children. And
And I mention them just because like I feel like I experienced probably a smaller version of that, feeling the true connection with nature, and
yes.
like looking at the clouds and the trees and feeling like this energy that I'm like, wow, this is probably always available to us, but like you said, like there's a block of us receiving that, right?
Hmm.
Like maybe logic of like it's just a tree. or
Mm-hmm.
like conditioning around like that's not what's, I don't know, valuable in this life. We just,
Mm-hmm.
those are just there for us to use. Um, and yeah, I think like the part that comes next after you experience something like that is integration,
Yes.
because when you're in ceremony or when you're taking plant medicine, you do get transported into a different dimension in some way. Like that's what it feels like. It's a different state
Mm-hmm.
of being. And then you're dropped back into world, into the earth.
And it's so hard. I remember sitting at work and thinking, I don't
Mm,
belong here. Why am I
mm-hmm.
here? And it's like, okay, I have bills to pay,
Yeah.
but um, but really feeling like out of place, like, oh, I don't belong here. Like I shouldn't be sitting here. And it was very emotional to have to be
Yeah.
like, okay, but this is life. Like we're here living this 3D life.
Yeah, it's kind of like a very harsh wake up. I feel like we could talk about this like, or maybe it's another other episode, but I do want to wrap up this part because we're coming up on time. So I'm wondering maybe like to wrap up this piece with this experience now, looking back at, since we started off with your upbringing and your divorce, does it give it a different meaning? Did it change that experience, that memory for you? Or
I
no?
feel like I am just so grateful for every part of me that I've experienced. Like, I wouldn't
Mm,
change anything. I am who I
mm,
am because of the experiences that I've went through, because I've learned through
yeah.
them and I've gotten so much strength from them. Um, it's like it's that realization of like, yeah, we come here and there is an agenda. We're here because we're wanting to learn certain lessons. We're wanting to go and experience certain things. It's definitely coming back into my body and being like, oh, I shouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, why did that happen to me? No, it happened for me. It was tough,
Mm,
it was rough, but it was all for a reason. It had its purpose. Um, I don't hold any like resentment or any hatred towards, my ex or the experience itself because it's taught me so much. And
mm,
now I can,
wow.
resonate with other women who have maybe gone through that and now need that guidance of getting through it.
Yeah. Do you think that it's a combination of everything you've experienced that give you the knowing that we come here to learn lessons? Or was it just that one Bufo experience? And the reason that I ask is that I think that sometimes when you're going through the hard stuff, it can feel like, well, that's BS that I'm here to learn. Like, I don't care to learn. I'd rather not feel this.
I feel like I had an understanding of it prior, but not to the
Mm,
depth that I do now.
I
It's like
see.
it
Hmm.
definitely changes the perspective because now it's like, no, now you really know that there is something greater, that you are more than just this, physical body.
Hmm. Than this experience.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being open to sharing your experience and the depth of it. I know so many people can resonate with being in a relationship that maybe
Mhm.
feels like that's it. That's where this is what I created for myself. I'm stuck here, and I have to make it work. Or finding themselves in the post, right? Like leaving something that was toxic and feeling the ups and downs of like, oh, now I get to find myself. But also that can be scary for people, right?
Mhm.
Having all that freedom doesn't always feel as good as we thought it would. So I think even that's so, common that we experience like the, okay, well, now I have my freedom back, but I don't want it. I would rather just like go back to normal and so sometimes we kind of glitch in and out of the knowing that this is what's
Mhm.
next for us, but missing the comfort of what we had before.
No, absolutely. I can completely agree with that. It is hard because it's like, okay, I lived 16 years of my life like this, and now I'm kind of adjusting to something different. And it's breaking through that and being uncomfortable that kind of brings you to a greater place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful too, to show like there's so much more out there for you, but there is no bridge from like the toxicity to like your new life. You know, you
Yeah.
get to literally experience it and change and transform. You don't just become the next version of you, you create it. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
transform and change to become it. It doesn't just happen overnight. So, just a reminder to have patience with yourselves as you're navigating change and this new version of you.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. It does take time. It takes time to kind of get from A to B, like you can't just skip all the in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like you said, like the going out and then coming home to the darkness. Of course,
Hmm.
like that doesn't feel comfy, but that's
Hmm.
like facing you with you, right? And it's
Hmm.
like, well, who are you really? Who do you want to become? Because you could
Yeah,
have stayed there and not
yeah,
kept searching. Yeah.
exactly. Hmm.
Ooh. Okay. So I love to do like a resource kind of section in the podcast just for anyone who's resonating and maybe wants to hear, like maybe read a book that you read, listen to a song that you listen to. So we're going to head into that section.
Okay.
¿Estás lista?
Yes.
What is your favorite healing or mindful tool?
For me, and I don't know how this could resonate with other people, but one of my tools is definitely okay, meditation. But because sometimes, you can get into your head now that I'm like fully here in this spiritual realm type of thing, and working with like doing healings and things, like sometimes I feel like I still need to ground myself. So, like meditation, sitting outside and doing it. And so I
Mm.
also practice hape just to kind of reground my energy.
Mm. What is a habit that you do for yourself every day?
A habit that I do every day. I definitely try to, wake up every day and speak with my spirit team. Because honestly, through my journey, like being in that state of gratitude has been the best place to be in. So I try
Mm.
to always, express that to them and just have gratitude for everything that is developing, coming, and has happened. Like just waking up, and being
Mhm.
able to be here and knowing that I'm here to serve.
Favorite quote or advice?
To really look within yourself, because a lot of us, including myself, when I was seeking answers, I would go everywhere else. I would go to different psychics and mediums and, just trying to find answers everywhere else and not realizing that everything I was searching for, and it may sound so cliche, is really truly
Yeah.
within myself. I have all the answers, it's just like you said, we have to be patient and everything will unveil itself in divine timing.
I mention that on lives often. It's like sometimes people get stuck in the search phase of like you tell me, you tell me, you tell me. But like the
Mhm.
what you're searching for is for you to tell yourself, you know? Like
Mhm.
it that's all kind of temporary. It's similar to like going after a ton of achievements. Achievements are temporary, but what you're really like searching for is to see yourself, to be a witness to yourself. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're searching for others to be a witness to you and tell you, like, just tell me because I can't figure it out. But it'll always be put through their lens. So it's so helpful when you are the one asking the questions and getting the answers within you.
I have found that, through the many, many times that I went elsewhere seeking answers, our spirit team only gives us bits and pieces because the bigger
Mm,
picture is something that we're going to find within ourselves and they want to bring to us themselves versus
mm.
having someone else give you all the answers.
Yeah, yeah. What is a book that you've read either throughout your journey or now that you would recommend for people?
So, in the beginning of my journey, I read The Power of Now. And that book
Mm,
has really stuck with me because, there's so many times where we get stuck in our past, and that's where our
mm-hmm,
depression comes, or we get so caught
mm,
up in like what's coming, what's in the future, like wanting to know what's next and what's out there,
yeah,
that we then become so anxious. And living in the present moment is so important.
yeah. I love that book, The Power of Now.
Yes.
by Eckhart Tolle, I
Yes.
think.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your resources. Now, I definitely want to give you a moment for you to share your social media, what you do, like since you're doing healings now, if you want to talk a little bit about that, so that those that are listening and are like, oh my God, I want to check her stuff out, know where to do
You
so.
can find me on Instagram or TikTok. It's Rising from Within 444. And on there, I do have my link tree where people can book a session with me. We could do a healing session. Within my healing sessions, I channel light language, and it comes through my hands, sometimes verbally. But I have been able to transmute energy, shift energy. Whether it's helping you release limited beliefs, or just cleansing your chakras, up to even physical. I have been able to help with that healing as well. So yeah, you can definitely find me there and book a session. Now in person, if there's anyone in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, we sometimes do healing circles, cacao ceremonies and full moon ceremonies, things like that.
All right, you guys. Well, I'll leave her information down below as well, so that you guys can check her out, look at her healing sessions and stuff. I had one with her as well. And when you work with a healer, like for me, when I started to speak with Denise, right away my whole body went into chills. Like I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good. Because you like, it's so interesting, but like someone who works on their energy and works with energy, you feel it, it's like
Mhm.
this, it's already so palpable. So definitely left a 5-star review, recommended
No,
if
thank
you want
you.
to check out her work. Yeah. But all right, you guys, I hope that you guys enjoyed part 1 with Denise. We are going to be recording a part 2. And like I mentioned, we'll be talking a little bit about like religion, spirituality, awakening, kind of managing that as you're figuring out yourself, and I know that so many people experience that. So, thank you everyone for tuning in. Please share this with your amigas, amigos, amigues, whoever you think would find this helpful. And remember, First Gen, that I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. And I hope by now some of you love yourself. It's been 2 years of this podcast. You better love yourself by now. Ok, pues cuídense mucho. Bye.